Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Wow, talk about a wild ride. I mean, who would have thought that a random stranger would just hop into your truck and mistake you for their Uber driver? And the audacity to demand a ride like she's entitled to it. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I am most definitely not an Uber driver. As the title says, I am not an Uber or Lyft driver. There's no indication anywhere on my vehicle that I would be. I don't really put stickers on my truck anyway, so it's not like there's any confusion on this. I drive a 2014 Silverado, and I take care of it and keep the inside looking nice. And from some of the horror stories I've heard, I don't want to let strangers in my truck. Nothing against Uber or Lyft drivers, just not doing it in a vehicle I worked very hard to be able to buy. Anywho, yesterday I drove my wife to Ulta so she could shop for beauty products. I really had no interest in going in, so I parked and played on my empty phone for a bit. After about 15 minutes, the passenger door opens and some stranger gets in. This woman looked like she walked straight out of a meme about Karens and hopped into my truck. Random lady. No wonder I was waiting so long. You're over here fooling around. Me. I think you're in the wrong vehicle. I don't know you. Well, why are you in my truck? RL, I need to go to address. It's down by the amphitheater. Me. I'm not a cab. RL, you're the Uber driver I called for. You have the sticker. I look around. I totally have friends that would put something on my truck as a joke, but I wasn't seeing it. Ma'am, you must be seeing things. There's no sticker on my truck. I'm not an Uber driver. Random lady pulls out her phone and with a tone of such superiority that I immediately wanted to just push her out the door says, my app says that the driver will be in a blue Ford Focus, and that's you. I laughed out loud. RL, what's so funny? Me. I tell you what, I'll give you a free ride to the eye doctor to get you some glasses. You said your driver was in a blue Ford Focus? A small car? And you confused it with a dark gray Chevy Silverado? A pickup truck? In no possible trick of the light could those ever get mixed up. You obviously need glasses, Mrs. Magoo. I'm sure everyone's about to be shocked by her next line. I've read enough Reddit stories and even written one or two. I should have seen this coming. RL, how dare you? Me, I'm not your driver. I don't drive for Uber. There's no sticker. You got into the completely wrong vehicle. The only thing that I can see as a reason is that either your eyesight's terrible or you're starting to come down with Alzheimer's or dementia, which would be tragic, but I don't think it's the case. I was watching the Karen rage build up in her face. I was expecting the explosion, but she switched tactics on me. I thought she was going to zig, but she zagged. RL, well, I still need a ride and you aren't doing anything, so why don't you just take me there? I can give you $5. She said this like she was trying to bribe a little kid with a piece of candy. I might have been willing to give her a ride. I'm a nice guy to most people and generally am willing to help people out. However, her condescending tone got under my skin, and I'm not going to reward that kind of behavior. Me. No, and you need to get out. My wife is here. She had just shown up. This lady had the audacity to roll down the window and tell my wife, you can wait, I need a ride. It was that moment, too, that I just happened to see a blue Ford Focus driving really slow in front of the store and the driver looking around. Obviously her ride. I started speaking slowly while keeping an eye on the driver. Ma'am, listen. Pause for dramatic effect. I'm not driving you anywhere. I'm taking my wife home and she definitely doesn't have to wait for you. You need to get out of my truck before I call the police. If you're waiting for your ride, you need to settle that with Uber. By the way, the Uber driver you were waiting for is leaving the parking lot right now. I pointed to the blue car that was moving to the lot's exit back onto the road. She flung my door open and tried to go chasing after him. It was pretty comical, really. My wife gets in and says, you have a strange taste in hookers. Me, another 5 minutes, I think I could have gotten a free handy. We drove past her on the way out. She didn't look happy. The amount of people who willingly get into a strange car without any concern is asking to be kidnapped. And our second story. You demand that we honor your reservation? Sure thing. A few years back, I worked at one of the big car rentals in a rather small city in Germany. We had 2 offices, one in the outskirts with quite a sizable lot and a very small one at the train station, 4 official parking spots in the front of the office, about 6 parking spots at the other end of the train station at the staff parking lot we used to not get in trouble for using parking spots we didn't pay for. That one was a bit of a prestige thing because it enabled us to serve our business customers right when they got off the train. Both offices worked closely together, even sharing a vehicle pool within the booking software, and we were expected to move the cars around accordingly. The business at the station at the train station followed a pattern that would repeat every week. Every Monday, business customers would arrive by train, pick up their car to get to their clients during the week, and drop them off by the end of the week to leave by train again. Most would drop the car off on Thursday. One week, we could already see disaster approaching by the middle of the previous week. Due to some error in the booking software and some cars spontaneously not returning to our offices, our carpool stood at -60 for Monday at the train station office. See, that's not unusual on a Monday. The problem was that overall, our shared carpool stood at -15. Since we're quite small and only a franchise of the car rental company, there was no way we would get extra cars from bigger stations, so we started trying to reach out to business customers to inform them that we most likely couldn't serve all reservations, and if we could, maybe cancel on them. Some understood, while some insisted, and even more were not available when we tried to contact them. On Friday, my supervisor asked me if I could cover the shift at the train station office on Monday because she knew the colleague who was supposed to would mentally break down if yelled at by customers. I knew it'd be hell, but knowing that she would have the morning shift at the main office, we were sure we could make it work somehow. I asked to also work on Sunday at the train station office to make sure all cars were ready for the next day, since we had around 70 reservations between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. that day. So I worked my Sunday shift, got everything prepared as far as I could, and went home. On Monday, we opened at 6 a.m. I got in at 5:30 like always, and there was already a small line queued up in front of the door. I told them we don't open until 6, and they accepted it. Everything went sort of smoothly until about 8:30 a.m. All my cars were gone, and I received a somewhat steady supply of cars from the main office until then. I constantly kept my supervisor updated with a list of my reservations and which cars from the main office I'd like to have for that, and she tried to make it work. Then she calls me to tell me that she's also out of cars due to some having to be off-fleeted due to mileage or simply not returning. I knew everything would go to shambles after that and mentally prepared for it. I started telling customers that we couldn't possibly serve their reservations. Most understood due to the fact that I didn't have any cars in front of my office, but a few insisted that they get their cars. Cue malicious compliance. I called my supervisor and told her that some clients insisted on getting a move on, now and no matter how. After some short venting on her side, we came up with an idea. We might not have any cars anymore, but had an incredible excess of moving vans. Mercedes Sprinter, VW Crafter, and such that we didn't really need any of. Now, the train station office isn't supposed to rent out vans, but we found a workaround for that. The transfer drivers had a company car that could be rented out, so I checked it in at my station, created the rental agreement with that, switched my view to the main office, and initiated a vehicle switch, all without ever having a physical car at my station. So the rental agreement was completed and the transfer drivers started bringing our white company-branded moving vans down to my office. I even told one especially insistent customer that I was able to fulfill his wish for an automatic transmission diesel. I will never forget the look on the face of this suit wearer when he realized he'll be driving in a moving van to his client. The train station office satisfaction rating took quite a beating after this, but we didn't really care about that since we rarely got bonuses down there anyway. And our next story. I'm from the HOA, and by the way, I sold your house while you were in Europe. I lived in Europe for a few years. My mom passed away early, and I didn't really get along with my dad, who lived in the U.S. I wasn't exactly what you'd call Hallmark movie material. We talk maybe once a year, and that's being generous. It was like our family motto was, "See you next leap year." Anyway, I had to zip over to the States for some work shindig, and I figured, hey, why not drop in on the old man? Plot twist. Turns out he'd been pushing up daisies for over a year and nobody bothered to send me the memo. Classic dad move, am I right? So my aunt breaks the news and tells me my dad left his pride and joy, a muscle car that's more vintage than a Blockbuster store, to my cousin. And me? I got the house. Now, this house was nestled in one of those homeowners associations. After paying my respects to dear old dad, better late than never, I decided to scope out the casa. Imagine my surprise when I find a lovely Chinese family living there who explained in a mix of charades and broken English that they were renting from some dude down the street. They pointed me in his direction, and off I went. I find the guy, and he's all, "Yeah, your dad and I were beer buddies. He told me if the house was ever empty for a decade, I could just have it." I'm like, "Mate, I'm the rightful heir to the kingdom of dust and cobwebs. What's this about you owning the place?" He hits me with, "I'm the king of the castle now, been renting it out to the Ming dynasty over there and planning to flip this bad boy for a profit." When I protested, he basically gave me the boot and threatened to call the cops. And he did. The police show up, probably expecting a rerun of Cops, and after hearing my sob story, they're like, "Sorry, bud, but you gotta vacate the premises." Long story short, I had to lawyer up. We're talking 6 months of legal gladiator combat. This guy's argument was basically, "But my buddy promised," without a shred of paper to back it up. The judge ended up awarding me a cool $100K in damages. Turns out the Chinese family had been treating the place better than a panda at a bamboo buffet, so I worked out a legit lease with them. They stayed, I got a nice little overseas income, and peace was restored to the realm. And that, my friends, is how I accidentally became an international landlord. I almost fell out of my chair at the phrase "classic dad." Somebody's obviously lucky to have a family like that. And our last story. Hey, HOA, fix my house, now! The wife and I were in a condo that had an outdoor porch with wooden sidewalls and beams. Many of the beams were rotting because the upstairs neighbor had watered her plants for years and the water soaked into wood and turned it into a sponge-like material. The HOA rules were very clear that I was not allowed to replace the wood or do anything. And for months, our requests to have the porch repaired were summarily ignored. Well, times got lucky for us, and we wanted to rent out our condo while we moved into our new house. By this time, the porch structures were unstable and moved almost freely. Our HOA had frequently chided us about our grill being visible on the porch, as well as other very minor things, so I went to my first HOA meeting with a minor chip on my shoulder already and a highlighted copy of the bylaws in my hand. I attend the meeting, and 2 of the 3 board members were reasonable people, but one of them, whom I'll call Mr. Rule Guy, was one of those folks who never met a rule he didn't like. They chastised a few of the tenants for various minor transgressions, and then they opened the floor for tenant items. I stepped up and politely showed them the pictures of the rotting wood and exposed nails, and Mr. Rule Guy says, "We are aware that there are several porches that require repairs, and we will address and repair your porch when your place in the queue is ready." Oh, he was snide about it too. At that point, I noted in the bylaws that the HOA is responsible for all repairs of the porch, and because we were about to rent out our apartment to a family, I'm forced to transfer all liability for potential injuries to the prospective tenants, including children, to the HOA. The chair of the HOA board, the reasonable lady, said, "Well, we will naturally move your unit to the top of the queue, and it should be repaired within a couple of weeks." Mr. Rule Guy sat there stone-faced. Mic drop. Thank you for your attention. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.